Welcome to Nightfall Tales. By 7 in the evening, the rain had stopped pretending it would pass. All afternoon it had drifted over Kakamega in polite curtains, silver against the eucalyptus trees, soft enough that people still crossed the market road balancing bread and paraffin and bunches of Sukuma wiki under one arm. But now the sky had lowered and settled over the town like a lid, and the rain came straight and heavy, flattening the grass, hammering on the corrugated roofs, and turning every patch of red earth into dark, shining mud. Dr. Amina Ndlovu watched it through the louvered window of the Shivanga outpatient clinic while she signed the last file of the day. The power had gone 20 minutes earlier. The backup inverter was only strong enough for one strip light in reception and the medicine fridge in the treatment room, so the rest of the clinic sat in a warm half-darkness that smelled of rubbing alcohol, wet clothes, and paper swollen by humidity. Nurse Miriam had already left. The cleaner had mopped the corridor and gone home before the road to her village became too slick for a motorbike. Amina was alone except for the rain and the faint mechanical hum of the fridge. She should have left earlier. She lived 25 minutes away, 35 in weather like this, in a rented bungalow near the teacher's college. She had soup at home, a clean towel, dry socks, and every intention of reaching them before the night worsened. She slid the last patient folder into the metal tray, capped her pen, reached for her handbag, and the desk phone rang. Not loudly, not sharply. It rang with the flat old sound of a line that belonged to another decade. Amina paused, one hand on the bag strap. The clinic landline almost never rang after closing unless it was the sub-county hospital, an ambulance team, or someone old enough to trust a wire more than a mobile phone. She let it ring a second time before lifting the receiver. Shivanga Clinic, Dr. Ndlovu speaking. At first, she heard only rain. Not the rain outside her own window, but rain carried through distance and static, thin and hollow, as though it were falling somewhere inside the line itself. Then a voice, male, elderly, breath-stripped and uneven. "Doctor," it said, "you must come now." Amina straightened. "Sir, who am I speaking to?" No answer for a beat. Then, "Before the drums begin again." The sentence was so unexpected that her mind refused it for a moment. "Sir, what is your name?" A breath scraped close to the mouthpiece.
Then another voice entered behind the first, fainter, maybe female, maybe only interference, saying something too low to make out. Amina moved the receiver tighter against her ear. "Tell me the location." "Lusweti line," the old man said. "Past the old sugar road, near the forest. Mziwekesa is failing." The line crackled hard enough to sting. Amina knew the area by reputation, if not personally. A row of old estate houses near the western edge of Kakamega Forest. Half the young people had moved away. The older residents stayed because moving at that age was harder than enduring almost anything. "What symptoms?" she asked quickly. "Chest pain? Breathing difficulty? Loss of consciousness?" The man did not answer the question. He said with great effort, "If you delay, he will not be alone when he dies." Amina opened her mouth. The line went dead. She lowered the receiver and listened to the empty tone. For several seconds she stood without moving, hearing only the rain on the roof and the tiny buzz in the earpiece. Then she placed the phone down carefully and pulled the appointment register closer. There had been no Wakesa booked for the day, but there had been a note, scribbled in blue pen across the margin of a walk-in page around noon. Miriam's handwriting. Relative called. Elderly male, recurrent heart trouble. Lusweti line. If weather allows, review tonight or early morning. No number, no first name, no age. Amina pressed her thumb against the edge of the paper. It would have been easy, reasonable even, to leave it for morning. Night travel near the forest in heavy rain was foolish. No ambulance would go without a clearer brief, and she had no authority to force one out for a vague phone call and a half-written note. But she also knew how these nights ended for old men with bad hearts in remote places. By morning, relatives were not asking for treatment. They were asking for forms. She stood there another 10 seconds. Then she took her keys. Her car was a white Suzuki Vitara with one stubborn door seal and wipers that had begun to complain 6 months ago. The rain met her halfway across the yard, cold and immediate, plastering her hairline and shoulders before she had unlocked the driver's door. She threw her bag onto the passenger seat, set her emergency kit in the footwell, started the engine, and sat while the wipers dragged twin squeals across the glass. The road out of town was still manageable. Shop fronts cast long, trembling bars of color across puddles. Bodas moved in pairs, riders hunched in blue plastic capes. A church sign flashed in her headlights and vanished. Then the buildings thinned, the tarmac narrowed, and the ordinary human world of kiosks and salons and barber signs began to fall away behind her. She called the number display back from the clinic phone through her mobile. No network. She tried again at the junction near Makoko. This time the call began to connect, then failed with a burst of digital static that sounded almost like a laugh if one were already tired and inclined toward unhelpful interpretations. Amina set the phone face down beside the handbrake. The old sugar road had once carried lorries. Now it carried rainwater, loose stones, and memory. Grass pushed up through cracks in the edges, pools gathered in potholes deep enough to hide their own bottoms. On either side, dark stands of maize and sugarcane leaned under the weather, and beyond them, the deeper line of the forest sat against the horizon like one continuous wall. She drove at 30, then 25, then 20. Not because she was afraid, because fear implied she knew what to be afraid of. What she felt was a disciplined discomfort, the kind that belongs to anyone sensible enough to recognize bad roads, limited visibility, and the mathematics of being alone in a machine on a flooded track. 5 kilometers past the last trading center, she heard the first drum. It came from somewhere to her right, far beyond the cane. One beat only, low, hollow, wooden. Amina glanced sideways, then ahead again. The sound had the shape of ceremony, but none of the rhythm. Not celebration, not performance. More like a single testing strike, as though someone had touched a palm to stretched hide simply to confirm it still answered. She told herself at once that it was thunder displaced by trees and distance. The rain had 100 ways of changing sound. Still, she turned off the radio. The road bent left where an old signboard, long stripped of paint, leaned into a ditch. After that, the route worsened sharply. Mud washed over the stones, tree roots pushed under the surface. Her headlights caught slick trunks, thorn fences, and once the white startled eye of a goat standing under a jacaranda, motionless as a carved thing. Then, just beyond a culvert half hidden by reeds, she saw someone walking ahead of her. Not on the road, beside it. A tall figure under a black rain sheet, keeping exact pace with the car just beyond the reach of the headlights. Amina's hands tightened on the steering wheel before the rest of her reacted. She braked lightly, leaned forward, squinting through the rain. The figure took one more step and resolved itself into a split banana trunk, loose cloth snagged on one branch and lashing sideways in the weather. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Enough," she said aloud. Her own voice sounded smaller in the car than she expected. Another kilometer, then 2. The drum came again. This time not from the right, but ahead. One strike, pause, then another, softer, as though distance had shifted between the first sound and the second in a way ordinary distance should not. Amina checked the dashboard clock. 7:52. She should have reached Lusweti line by then, unless she had missed a turning. unless the old caller had given local directions the way villagers sometimes did, measured not by kilometers but by landmarks that disappeared 10 years ago and remained perfectly real in speech. At the next fork, she stopped. Rain rattled over the roof with such force it nearly erased everything else. She lowered the window by 2 inches to listen for water flow, human noise, a dog, anything that might suggest habitation. What entered instead was air so cold and green-smelling that it seemed drawn from inside the forest itself. And beneath the rain, for no more than 2 seconds, she heard it clearly. A voice calling, "Daktari!" Not loudly, not desperately, almost patiently. The word came from the left fork. She raised the window at once and stared into the dark lane. There was no light there, no house lamp, no torch, no movement except rain sliding silver through her high beams. Amina did not believe in being guided by disembodied voices in storm weather. She also did not believe coincidence was as common as people claimed. She took the left fork. The lane descended into thicker trees. Not deep forest yet, but the edgeland before it. Wild growth, neglected hedges, giant ferns, old fence posts collapsing into creepers. Her tires slipped once, then again. She corrected carefully. The rain began to weaken, but only because the tree cover broke its force before it reached the road. Drops now struck in irregular bursts from the leaves overhead, heavy enough to sound like thrown stones. Then she saw the houses. 3 on the right, 2 on the left. Long, low estate structures with rusted roofs and shuttered windows, each sitting back from the road behind waist-high grass and broken wire fences. No lights, no smoke, no signs of present life. The lane continued uphill beyond them toward the true darkness of the forest boundary. Amina slowed almost to walking pace. One of the houses had its front door standing open. Warm, amber light moved inside. Not electrical light, too soft for that. It wavered. Lantern light. She parked in the road and killed the engine. The silence afterward felt abrupt and oversized. Rain dripped from the trees. Somewhere, water moved through a ditch. Her own cooling engine ticked beneath the hood. She took her emergency bag, switched on her phone torch, and stepped out. Mud clung instantly to her shoes. "Hello?" she called. "Clinic doctor?" The lantern glow shifted once across the inside wall, as though someone had passed in front of it. Amina crossed the yard. The house had once been painted cream. Now mold had eaten most of the lower walls green. One shutter hung by a single hinge. The front step had cracked down the middle and filled with moss. Up close, the open doorway gave off a smell not of people, but of damp timber, wet plaster, and something older beneath. Closed rooms, dead insects, cloth gone to dust. She stopped at the threshold. The lantern sat on the floor of the corridor. No one held it. No one moved beyond it. The flame inside the glass burned low and steady. Next to it lay a walking stick and a pair of men's sandals turned outward as though removed in a hurry. Amina did not enter immediately. "Mr. Wakesa?" she called. "You asked for a doctor?" A floorboard creaked somewhere deeper in the house. Not the sharp crack of fresh weight, but the slow complaint of wood shifting after a long time under nothing at all. Amina lifted the lantern with one hand and played her torch beam ahead with the other. The sitting room was empty. 2 armchairs faced each other near a dead fireplace. A knitted throw had fallen half to the floor and gone stiff with damp. A calendar hung crooked on the far wall. It showed an election month from 11 years earlier. The dates after the 17th had been crossed through in red pen. none beyond that. She set the lantern down on the table and checked the next room. Kitchen, empty. Back room, empty. Bedroom 1, iron bedstead, no mattress, dust thick enough to hold insect tracks. Bedroom 2, a medicine bottle on the sill, expired 9 years ago. Amina stood very still in the corridor and listened. The house returned nothing. Not breathing, not whispered movement, not the small, involuntary sounds that living bodies make even when trying to be silent. There was only rain in the leaves outside, and, from very far away, one low drumbeat moving through the dark. Her phone screen flashed weakly. No service. She turned toward the front room again. That was when she noticed the photograph. It stood in a warped frame on the mantel, tilted slightly backward. In it, 6 people posed outside the same house on a bright afternoon long gone. 2 older adults in the middle, a woman with a baby, 2 boys, and a young man in a white clinic coat standing at the edge as though he had been persuaded to join at the last second. Amina lifted the frame. The young man smiling uncertainly at the camera was wearing a name badge. Clinical Officer J. Mbali. She knew the name, not personally. From county stories, training center gossip, the kind of tale every region keeps polished through repetition. Joseph Mbali had been the last clinician assigned to Lusweti Line before the estate houses were abandoned. One rainy season, he answered a night call near the forest edge and did not return. His motorbike was found 2 days later upright beside the road, engine cold, medical bags strapped neatly to the rear carrier. No body, no blood, no footprints that survived the weather. Amina set the frame down much more carefully than she had picked it up. The air in the house had changed. Not temperature at first, density.
As though another presence had entered the room and was standing just outside the range of sight, altering the space only by being in it. Then, the cold followed. It moved over her wrists and throat with such sudden precision that she actually looked toward the windows, expecting to find a broken pane or open back door. There was none. The cold gathered anyway, settling lowest in the corridor behind her. Amina turned. At the far end of the corridor, where her torch beam thinned into shadow, someone was standing. The figure was tall and narrow and entirely black. Not black like cloth, but black like an absence cut vertically into the house. It had the arrangement of a person: head, shoulders, arms hanging close to its sides, but the edges did not remain stable long enough for the eye to trust them. Every time she focused directly, the outline seemed to shift half an inch elsewhere. Amina's first instinct was professional, irrationally so. "Are you injured?" she said. The figure did not move. Her second instinct was to step backward. She did that. The floorboard under her heel gave a short, dry crack. At once, the thing in the corridor tilted its head. The motion was small, human-sized, human-shaped, but it carried with it such concentrated wrongness that Amina felt her stomach pull tight as a fist. Then, it made a sound. Not a growl, not a cry. A deep, resonant tone like a drum struck underwater, followed by a second note rising inside it, and then a third, closer, thinner, almost vocal. The 3 sounds rubbed against each other until they formed something that resembled speech without containing words. Her torch trembled in her hand. The lantern flame flattened. The sound did not seem to reach her through the air alone. It touched her teeth. It moved along the bones behind her ears. Amina backed into the sitting room. The figure remained in the corridor. The layered note changed again, climbing very slightly in pitch, testing, adjusting, searching. And then,
Horribly, unmistakably, it found a shape her brain could understand. Amina. Her own name, spoken not by a mouth, but assembled from vibration. She ran. Not wildly, not screaming. She snatched her bag, hit the doorway with her shoulder, nearly lost one shoe in the mud, and crossed the yard in hard, controlled strides toward the car. The lantern behind her went out with a soft, glassy pop. She did not look back until her hand hit the driver's handle. The figure was no longer in the house. It stood beside the rear of the Vitara with one hand, if hand was the correct word, resting lightly on the spare tire. Rain fell through it, or into it. She could not tell which. Amina froze. The thing turned its head toward her, and for one impossible second, the yard brightened with a flash of lightning far beyond the trees. In that white instant, she saw there was no face. Not blankness, not damage, simply no face where a face should have been. Only depth, as though the rain and dark had opened and been taught the rough dimensions of a man. The thunder arrived late and distant. The figure had not moved, but the drum sound came again, closer, almost intimate, and under it, another texture had joined. The soft electrical chatter of an old landline left off the hook. Amina yanked open the door, threw herself inside, and locked it. Her hands remained steady enough to start the engine on the first turn. That steadiness frightened her more than shaking would have. It meant some older part of her had already accepted that panic would be useless. Headlights flooded the yard. The rear of the vehicle stood empty. She reversed too fast, corrected, hit the lane hard, and drove. Branches whipped the sides, mud sprayed. Twice the tires slid far enough that the car seemed to float. She kept it moving. The rain thickened again beyond the trees, and with it came the sound, sometimes behind her, sometimes ahead, sometimes running level with the windows in a pattern too deliberate to belong to weather. A drum beat, then the line static, then, once, very faintly, her own name repeated in that patient, unfinished voice. At the fork, she nearly took the wrong turn. Something stopped her. Not logic, not sight. A pressure, like being watched from one direction and not the other. She chose the right branch and roared onto the sugar road with enough force to jar the glove box open. Papers burst out across the passenger footwell. Insurance copy, road license, spare masks, and one folded file she did not remember bringing. Amina drove another full kilometer before she dared glance down. The folded paper lay against the emergency bag. County clinic referral form. Water-stained. Old. Name of patient. J. Imbali. Status box ticked in blue ink. Awaiting doctor review. Date. 11 years earlier. At the bottom, where a signature line should have been, the paper bore only 3 words written in a careful hand already half dissolved by age. He answered back. Amina did not stop driving until she reached the first place with electric light. It was a petrol station near the highway, one pump still open, one bored attendant watching a football replay through the kiosk window. The ordinariness of the scene hit her so hard she had to grip the steering wheel and breathe before getting out. The attendant asked whether she was all right. She heard herself say yes. Her voice sounded normal. She bought a bottle of water she did not want. She used the toilet simply because it had white tiles and fluorescent lighting and a bolt on the inside. When she came back to the car, the old referral form was gone. Only the other papers remained. At 9:14, with full network restored, she called county records from the station forecourt and woke the night administrator. She asked about Luzweti line. There was a pause on the other end. Then, the administrator said the houses had been empty for over a decade. A sinkhole and repeated disappearances had finished what the estate closure began. No staff had been assigned there since Joseph Mbali. The old clinic line had been removed years ago. "Why?" the administrator asked. Amina looked past the bright pumps toward the dark road she had returned from. "I received a call," she said. Another silence. Then, very carefully, "From which number?" Amina checked the missed line record forwarded from the clinic switchboard. It showed no number. Only 4 words where the caller ID should have been. "Incoming, internal extension 3. There had never been an extension 3 at Shivanga Clinic. The next morning, against advice she would later give herself many times, Amina returned in daylight with 2 local officers, a public health assistant, and a groundsman from the sub-county office. The left fork was there. The houses were there. But the one with the open door stood sealed, under a chain so old the padlock had fused orange with rust. The windows were boarded from inside. Dust lay unbroken across the threshold. No footprints marked the yard, except the fresh ones made by the group itself. Inside, after the officers forced the chain, they found no lantern, no sandals, no recent disturbance. Only damp furniture, election calendars, and on the mantel, a warped photograph of the Lusweti residence taken years before abandonment. 6 people stood in the picture. 2 elders, a woman with a baby, 2 boys, and at the far edge, in a white clinic coat, Joseph Mbali. Except he was no longer the only medical worker in the frame. Standing just beside him, one shoulder slightly turned toward the camera as if she had stepped in at the last second, was Dr. Amina Ndlovu. The version of her in the photograph was wearing the same navy rain jacket she had worn the previous night. One sleeve was wet to the elbow. And though every other person in the picture cast a shadow in the afternoon sun, she did not. "Good night,"